The top 5 ways to be a shipper of choice. Daseke bets heavy on oil with Aveda acquisition. The next big thing in LiDAR is tiny and massively scalable. And CSX aims for trucking. I'm JP.
And I'm Chad.
And we discuss all these topics and more on this week's episode of What the Truck. You got that, Chad? There you go.
Whoa, what you drinking there this time, JP?
You know me, I've got my Bell's Two Hearted out of Comstock, Michigan. I'll have you know that it was ranked the second best beer in America from 2010 to 2016 by the American Homebrewers Association. And in 2017, it took the top spot.
Is that an authoritative source? I think we might need to document that a little bit better.
I feel like if you're going to get your buzz on, why not go with the best?
You know what? Sometimes you just feel like if you can't lick them, join them. And I decided to, Bell's is a fantastic brewer and company, and I decided to dive in with a variation on your favorite, and I decided to dive in with the Consecrator Doppelbock beer.
That sounds intense.
But I'm one-upping you on the ABV. 8! Whoa. 8 on the ABV.
What is that? A mountain goat on the label?
Yeah, I think that's a that's two goats. Those are bocks. And
I see.
It's a Doppelbock.
Got it. Cool. And how would you describe this beer?
I would describe it as really good. And it's strong. It's bocks. They're kind of a reddish brown in color. And I tend to think I like malt it's kind of in between like the sweet and the bitter to me, but I know like it does have like a chocolatey kind of caramelly, like a little bit of a molasses kind of thing. So I guess you would, if you had to say it was sweet, I guess you would, but I don't want to say it's sweet because sweet's not great. It's balanced. Dog.
Nice. All right. Cool.
All right. Well, that's fun. Are you ready to play a game, JP?
As long as it's not riddles, I'm good.
Well, you did just fine on Riddle Me This last.
I did horrible at Riddle Me This.
Riddle Me This was tough. Today we're playing trucker slang.
Okay.
And the trucker, this is just focused on cities. Trucker slang for cities.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
These really aren't as hard as you would think.
Okay.
I'm gonna avoid giving you hints unless you seem to be struggling. Okay. Are you ready? Should we do 5? Let's do 5.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start with this. Bull City.
Chicago.
No, that's a good. That's
San Antonio.
Negative. That's Durham, NC, as in Bull Durham. Okay, all right. Well, let's give you an easy one. Let's give you. Well, Barry's not going to help you here.
Sorry.
The Big D.
Detroit.
Negative, Captain. Come on, the Big D.
Dover, Delaware.
Really, you're joking, though, right? You're joking.
Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. How about Beantown?
Boston.
Yeah, there we go. Big A. I think that one's kind of tough.
Austin?
No.
Annapolis?
No, you're just going to write down your list of A's.
Appleton?
Amarillo. Amarillo. How about, let's see. And have we done 4 now? Let's do 4. Let's try for a 5. Choo-choo.
Chattanooga?
That's correct!
Yeah!
Yay! And it's all happening here in the
Choo-choo.
freight city of Chattanooga. All right, well, I think we should do that again next week and see just how well we can do with the cities.
There are so many cities.
And so little time. The headlines of the week. It's been a pretty interesting week, I would say, for middle of April. The first one is, what's happened with, shippers and our we had a surprising amount of interest in the article about the top 5, things that shippers can do to be a shipper of choice.
Right. Got a huge amount of traffic.
And why do you think that is? Like, why is there suddenly so much interest in being a shipper of choice, JP?
I just think that when capacity is tight and pricing power is with carriers, that all of a sudden, instead of trucks, begging for freight, it's the other way around. And
the power shifts, the pendulum shifts.
As technology improves and people really start getting more visibility into shippers' operations, detention times, if they pay or not, that sort of things. I mean, it becomes easier and easier to record that data and then hold shippers accountable. So now the onus is on them to attract trucks, and they have and people know how well they're performing.
And I think that in the past, and I don't know, like how it's always gone, but I think, if you look at some of the ways that truckers have been treated by shippers, it looks like it's been pretty rough. And so there's almost this like,
for sure.
You did it to me, now I get my chance to get it back to you. Hopefully what we're moving toward with the advances in technology and things that we keep talking about are like, can we quit swinging the pendulum? Can we find a bit of a balance? Like when the crunch goes away here and it balances back in favor more towards the shipper,
right.
Can we start to figure out a way? Like, should we keep drivers in detention just because it favors shippers again? No.
No, what we're seeing now is that a lot of companies, even though, Q1 earnings seasons, has been going great overall, we have seen companies like General Mills, for example, say that their margins are getting squeezed by unexpectedly high transportation costs. And one way for shippers to negotiate lower trucking rates is to say, look, we will operate efficiently, we will get your truck rolling, we're not going to waste your time, and if we hold up your assets, we're going to pay you for it. It goes both ways. This can help shippers too. It's not just
help shippers. It helps everybody, right?
It's not just the trucks, squeezing the shippers. It's the shippers trying to, like you say, become a shipper of choice. And explain what that means.
Well, as a matter of fact, as soon as I started to take on this topic, I was like, well, why aren't shippers just already doing the things they should do? Well, you dive a little bit deeper into it, and you're like, it's not just it's easier said than done. It actually does take some strategic thinking and professional consistency. Paying fast and paying accurate isn't just as easy as it sounds. If you don't have as a shipper, you don't have a good TMS system, you're going to have to pay someone for a little bit of software infrastructure that's going to help you be able to track it. 90 days.
Ultimately, everything. In the current environment where people are, their productivity is being pushed to the maximum in some ways. Like every single manual process is going to be the weakest link for waste and error, right? And so you have to make investments up front in digital solutions. And we actually wrote an article this week about how shippers aren't necessarily the most informed about the kinds of digital solutions on the market, and guys who are used to just going out and purchasing transportation are now having to evaluate these tech startups, and there's an information asymmetry there. But the fundamental fact remains that
I totally agree, and I think that's point number 2. And we don't have to run down all of these the same way, but number 2, keep drivers out of detention. Detention is for high schoolers who skip class or pile up tardy slips, and let's keep it that way because detention is not cool, and it's the second fastest way to get your drivers angry. And what are your drivers stuck in detention going to do with all that free time? they're going to get on all the relevant social media platforms and start telling everybody about what a sucky shipper you are.
They're going to bitch in FreightWaves comments about you, and I mean, honestly, to the problematic shippers out there, we actually know who you are.
We've seen it on Facebook.
We've seen it on Facebook. We've seen it from our own data.
Yeah. And a really cool shout out to Doc 411. Everyone should check this place out. Doc 411 is actually for everybody. It's not just it's visibility for just to help everybody see where can you dock, where can you park, what's working well and where. So I think that little solutions
like shipper detail, like kind of like location specific details for
everyone. Literally, carriers can use it, truckers can use it, shippers can use it. Like across the board, Doc 411 can help people. It just makes it easier and faster and safer and less frustrating. In general,
cool.
Really, really like those guys, and that's a great company. I mean, the 345 is remember the golden rule. That's what we're talking about, not swinging the pendulum shift. Right. Treat others like you'd like to be treated. Okay, and I mean that shouldn't be easier said than done. But if you do it, you get high loyalty. And 4 is be better with your flexibility. It's not just It's not just being able to flexibility. When someone says, "Hey, you need to be more flexible," I think about, well, I know I need to be able to bend over and touch my toes better than that. But it's not just about being able to touch your toes. The flexibility is about what about expanding your times of service and operation? If you have a narrow window,
night deliveries,
expand it.
Right.
Now, again, easier said than done.
And we've seen the very biggest shippers, like Walmart, for example, kind of become more inflexible, right? Where now they're charging extra.
What's that called? On time, in full, OTIF?
Yeah, they're charging more for late deliveries and for early deliveries.
Yeah, and Kroger, I think, too.
But not every shipper is a Walmart, and not every shipper has that kind of muscle.
Yeah, to be able to control the stream. But I think everybody should be taking note. And also, overnight parking, you could, if you can have space to let them park overnight, man, drivers and carriers are going to want to work for you if you're going to help them out. The bottom line, though, number 5 I wrote for this shipper is visibility. In real estate, it's all about location, and in freight, it's all about visibility. Help the supply chain. It'll help everybody if you have visibility and you communicate. Everything is going to be better for everybody, and you are going to be a shipper of choice, and you are going to help create the best rates on the market. Yes. Tell us about the another huge headline of the week. How do you say it?
Daseke.
Daseke bets heavy on oil with the Aveda acquisition.
Right. So Daseke is it's a flatbed and specialized hauler based in the Midwest that has been, I think it was founded in 2000. Actually, I don't know exactly when it was founded, but it's been on a sort of consolidation tear. The way that this company grows is by buying other regional flatbed carriers, building it.
That's how they're growing.
And they have a kind of a soft integration model where all of the new acquisitions maintain their own brands and their own lanes, but they also they try to find synergies where they can.
Kind of like Rome took over other countries.
Yeah, little vassal states or something like that. But this was an interesting acquisition because, so as a flatbed hauler, you're already heavily exposed to industrial, freight, like moving giant machines, moving the blades for wind turbines and things like that. This is what Daseke does.
Wow. And
they purchased Aveda Transportation and Energy Services, which is actually based in Calgary, Canada. In Calgary, Canada, it's in Alberta. It's Canada's Houston. So it's a city that's been built up with oil and gas money from Alberta tar sands and everything else. And but 90% of their assets are in the U.S. and they sort of They specialize in providing oil field services in Alberta, North Dakota, Wyoming, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Texas. Basically, anywhere there's oil activity in North America, that's what they do. And,
Okay.
and they are, and what they call themselves one of the largest oil rig moving companies in North America.
Daseke. Cool.
And so,
Good to know.
So
about.
that's Aveda. So
Aveda is
yeah.
who they've acquired.
And that was the oil field
Okay.
services company. And so
I see. I just missed that entire
right.
Okay.
And so Daseke is
So the Aveda owns all of that huge segment in Canada.
Canada, North Dakota,
and
Wyoming,
yeah,
Texas,
Pennsylvania. Okay.
Texas, Oklahoma.
So Daseke is okay.
And so where we're saying our thesis about this acquisition is that Daseke is really doubling down on the American oil industry. They're saying that we know we're already exposed to this. We know that flatbed rates, for example, are really tied to growth in American oil and gas production.
Yeah.
Especially fracking, which is truck intensive because of the use of sand and water, and the way that these sort of like low volume rigs move around, and there's not time to build out pipeline infrastructure to them.
Sure.
So they're already exposed to that. They're doubling down, and there's some. It makes sense to us because.
How much was the acquisition for? Was there a number?
It was, I want to say it was like 128 million Canadian.
Okay.
Basically, 60% financed and about 40% in cash or Daseke stock equivalent cash. So they've bought this company. And
I thought it would almost be bigger. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot, but for that much oil. But anyway, like we don't.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a big deal.
It's a special.
It's a
this is
pretty
all they
big
do.
deal.
It's like I think I want to say it's like 500 trucks.
Okay.
And all of their customers and lanes and things like that. But it makes sense to us because we are, FreightWaves, we're fairly bullish on the American oil industry.
Right.
We reported today that the Brent WTI spread is widening. So the discount that American oil trades at compared to international oil is widening, which means that our exports are more attractive on the international market compared to Brent crude.
Crazy.
So that helps us. The Baker Hughes rig count has risen about 17% since I want to say like middle of February, and the price of WTI, what those rigs are making, West Texas Intermediate, has risen like 26% since then. So it's like even though they're increasing the supply, the price still keeps going up. So we think this is a pretty good bet for Daseke. It makes sense, and it's another way to kind of roll up a flatbed carrier and keep their company growing.
Indeed. We also that's a cool story. A lot of data there. In this story about LiDAR, which we know what LiDAR is.
Yeah, we talked about LiDAR.
LiDAR's cool. It's what helps autonomous happen.
Yeah,
right?
it's light detection and ranging. It's basically laser radar for cars is essentially what it is. It's a sensor that puts out tons of laser beams, sees the reflection, and maps its environment based on that.
And well said. Thanks for giving us a little background on it. Luminar is this cool upstart company that's kind of been in stealth mode for the past actually 6 years.
Yeah, I've covered LiDAR and I haven't heard of them. I've covered Quanergy and Velodyne, and there's another Canadian company whose name slips my mind right now.
Well,
but I haven't really heard of
you have. I know
yeah.
you have. You're the one that taught me about LiDAR in the first place. Maybe one of the reasons that they've been under the radar as much as they have is that they were founded by a guy who is only right now 22 years old.
Whoa.
But we got to learn more about this dude in a minute here. But what the cool thing about this story?
It's like the Lil Wayne of LiDAR.
Is that your rap illusion?
Well, he started when he was like a teenager, apparently.
Oh, okay. Cool, man. Nice illusion. It's basically, the sensing is at the core of self-driving technology, and so they need orders of magnitude improvement to reach anything what they need. They need like huge improvement in terms of where they are now to get to where they want to be. And apparently, Luminar is claiming that it's for them. It's no longer a need for better hardware. It's actually they just need to figure out how to scale it, and they seem to think that they have. They're going to be scaling it, from what I can surmise, like at twice the amount that anybody has been proposing to scale it to date, which is 10,000 units per quarter.
Right.
But a brief bit about Austin Russell, CEO
Okay.
Austin Russell, who's 22. He began his career at an early age. He wrote his first patent by the time he was 12. And a year later, his interests became. You're like, woohoo!
Well, I mean, people like patent, like perpetual motion machines. Like,
really?
that
So
work.
you're underwhelmed so far.
Yeah.
A year later, his interest became focused on the photonics industry, where he later developed a number of projects ranging from laser-based wireless power transmission to projected augmented reality systems. And many of his projects required the creation of custom 3D mapping sensors. So he was well on his way at this point. He did make an early bet on the application of high performance LiDAR for the autonomous vehicle industry. And in fact, here he is after having the backing of a lot of institutes and fellowships, able to be the leader of a company that I think employs about 200 people, and
That's really impressive.
And yeah, it is, right. And in Palo Alto and Orlando, so on both coasts.
Interesting.
And it really does sound like they're hiring the right people now.
Really?
Like that can make this thing happen.
Do you have any information about like where they got their funding or anything like that? I was just wondering.
I don't. There's nothing about that
That'd be
I've
something
come
to look
across so
into.
far.
I wonder if
It would be.
if they're positioning themselves for another capital raise. When they talk about
great question.
when they talk about like, oh, we need to scale up, they're basically saying like translation, give us money.
They seem to be pretty well funded. I mean, so whatever's happening right now, they're getting some serious funding somehow. Like if your business model is, we're going to not only sort of like out hardware you, but we're going to outscale you, like that's intense. Especially when you're going against the Velodynes of the world and the Waymos and their own proprietary.
Quantergy is really a good one because they do their own software as well.
Yeah, so it's intense. It's a kind of an interesting story because they're coming out of nowhere, where it seemed like the players were sort of established.
So it sounds like they did get $36 million in funding, partly from the Peter Thiel backed 15-17.
Peter Thiel was the Peter Thiel Fellowship anyway was one of the fellowships that he was awarded. I didn't know it was to that extent. Wow. That's kind of a large investment.
No, he wasn't the only. It was Canvas Ventures, GVA Capital, and the 15-17 fund. But
I see. It was 3.
36 mil is great for a company coming out of stealth mode, right?
Right. Yeah, and I'm convinced right now that they might be able to really do something just with that announcement. I did reach out to them, and
so their model, from what I understand, is more of like it's tiny, like an array of tiny sensors, solid state, not like the rotating KFC bucket. Of like the early LiDAR.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, and I think that we've long since recognized, and we've talked about it a little bit briefly on the podcast, that a lot of this autonomous stuff is not scalable. It's not realistic, and that it's like a supercomputer in these beta testing cars, and it's what's going to be scalable. And this is like a little hint at like the beginning of how that could happen. So a little good news for the autonomous automotive side of things.
Interesting. Cool. Good story.
Finally, what is also interesting is rail. CSX, having a really successful Q1, is now aiming to take a slice out of trucking. So what do you know about this story?
So I know what our executive editor, John Kingston, reported from their earnings call, which was pretty spectacular. I want to say that they had profits of like $695 million in the first quarter, which is like over 60% growth year over year from Q1 2017.
Wow.
So that's solid.
Very solid.
But one of the interesting things that they're looking at, and I think it's something that is kind of gels with some of our earlier work on rail, is that they're really looking at some of the higher end premium freight. In rail terms, it's called merchandise. But we've written about the sort of slow decline of coal. We've written about the collapse of grain exports that's currently underway. And so some of the what we think of as like the traditional commodities that the railroad system was really built to handle in the late 19th century are no longer relevant as much. We're not exporting wheat because people are growing it in other places cheaper. We're not moving massive amounts of coal because first of all, liquefied natural gas is really cheap, and we want to go to wind and sun. So CSX, the headline from that earnings call was, we are actually going to actively pursue trucking freight. Things that people are accustomed to shipping by truck, we want to haul in our trains. And this isn't going to be, expedited, time critical kinds of freight, but this could be, just sort of.
I'm going to say that I like this. Not if I'm on one side of the fence or the other for rail or trucking, but I like that anything that can help the capacity crunch, right? It's.
I'm not really like a partisan either way. I think there are certain
right, me either. That's why I'm saying.
But there are certain, like the line haul segment of trucking, which is basically going from distribution center to distribution center. It's refurbishing and refilling and replenishing inventories of warehouses. That could probably be handled by rail. Like it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't matter if it takes a day or 2 days. Like the orders. It's not something like has to be immediately responsive to an order and get a last mile delivery and that sort of thing that trucks are especially suited for. So I understand the play in terms of where trucking might be vulnerable, especially because of extremely high trucking rates. I understand the why the trains would want to do this, or the railroads would want to do this, because we're seeing them shift more and more, like I said, to higher priced, what they call like premium freight. Yeah. So specialized, things like Mexican cars built in Mexico that are going to be sold in the U.S. That is fairly expensive to haul because it's high value. It's not like a load of coal. Railroads have been expanding those sorts of businesses, things they can charge a lot of money for. And so I'm not surprised to see them coming after merchandise. It's interesting. I will read a quote by the CEO of CSX, James Foote, who's Hunter Harrison's successor.
Okay.
He said he's talking about how they're approaching shippers and trying to convince them to switch from moving their stuff by truck to moving it by rail.
Interesting.
He said, so you have to go in and sell the business and sell them on the idea of converting. You have to provide it to them that you can handle their product and do it in the same way with the same level and efficiency that they get out of a truck.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I can see that.
and basically they're basically looking at this slice of merchandise where, you don't need the flexibility and the speed and the visibility of a single truckload. It needs to get to its place. It doesn't matter.
But what's your take? Like, do you think this is a cool thing for freight transportation, or do you think it's not a good thing?
I think it really only makes sense as a strategy in this current tight capacity environment, high demand, tight capacity. We'll see. I really don't.
But do you think? I mean, in some ways, it seems like capacity may very well remain tight for quite a while.
The thing, I mean, as just someone who studies the industry and studies economics, like we want people to be able to move their freight. We want people.
Right.
We want consumers to be able to buy things that don't have inflated prices because of really crappy transportation availability and capacity. So, I mean, I think we have to keep things moving one way or the other,
and keep costs down.
This is just how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We live in a free market capitalist society. So yeah, like whoever can do it can do it. Exciting, interesting stuff. Kind of a surprisingly interesting week of news. Let's run down the.
Is it time for big deal or little deal?
Let's do it. Let's try to succeed this time. Did we manage it last week? I feel like we did.
Barry's shaking his head.
No, I feel like we missed it by like 2.3 seconds.
Okay.
But this time, and it helps if you read the headlines super fast. But this time we have like some lengthy headlines. Anyway, let's give it a try. Here, starting about now, Chad's going to ask JP first. China to U.S. container rates have fallen for the 32nd straight week. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal. There's an overcapacity in international container shipping that will lead to smaller players going bankrupt and consolidation in the industry long term.
Oil, aluminum, nickel prices rally. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal for oil, big deal for aluminum, not a big deal for nickel. That's just a temporary panic.
So what is that? Federal Reserve survey highlights tariff impacts, driver shortages. Big deal or little deal?
I'd say it's a big deal. It's the first time that the Federal Reserve in the Beige Book has actually acknowledged tariffs as an economic risk. And, they're talking to metals companies that are saying that their business is changing. Are ELDs making our roads safer? Big deal or little deal?
Well, it's a little deal so far because of this first survey of 100 different truckers or carriers. They say that about 61% say that safety has increased and 39% has not, but there's no way to know yet.
Freight demand remains strong as manufacturing and construction activity picks up. Big deal or little deal?
I am going to say little deal, but it's a fascinating article full of a lot of detail. But it's a little deal in terms of the results fall in line with much of what we've seen in the first quarter, and it's healthy in a broader sense.
The trucking spot rate market is softening. Big deal or little deal?
Little deal. The contract market is setting the pace. Demand remains high. Capacity tight.
We made it! Oh my gosh! Woo!
Oh wow! Just.
All right. Well, that's excellent work, Chad.
And you too, JP. Another fine time. Maybe it was me joining you with the Bells Two Hearted. I mean, well, the Bells like brand.
I think that's probably what it was.
It was.
You should probably drink Too Hearted from now on.
I think you should break out a little bit. Have some variety.
Well, I think
it's the spice of life.
But how else are we going to win the big deal or little deal?
Well, just 16.0 ABVs every time. Anyway, I guess we're done.
We should sign off.
Yeah. And that'll do it for the big stories this week. As always, we go into more detail about each of the topics we've talked about today on our website, FreightWaves.com. We will continue to publish this podcast weekly, so be sure to subscribe to What the Truck on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, make sure to leave us a review to let us know what you think of our new podcast.
And if you're into learning about technology that's shaping up the industry, you definitely want to be at Transparency 18 in Atlanta this May. Visit transparency18.com to learn more about the event.
That'll do it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week on What the Truck. My joke about flexibility was really bad.